Well, our top focus story is the situation that is prevailing at the Assam-Mizoram border. Now, after the flare-up earlier this week in which 6 Assam policemen died, central forces are guarding the disputed sensitive patches of the interstate border. There has been no fresh flare-up. An uneasy calm in the area persists. Now, last evening, the Assam government issued an advisory for the people of Assam to not travel to Mizoram, saying that any threat to their personal safety cannot be accepted. The state government has also advised people from Assam staying in Mizoram to exercise utmost caution. An Assam top cop has said that all vehicles coming from Mizoram will be checked for drugs. Assam has also alleged that the Mizoram government has not removed its police from the disputed site. And the Chief Minister of Mizoram, Zoramthanga, spoke with my colleague Gargi Rawat last evening. This is what he had to say.
Well, to talk more about this tension and unprecedented tension between two Indian states, we're now joined by the Chief Minister of Mizoram. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to NDTV. Ever since the violence that took place on Monday, the tension has continued between the two states, and now it's reached a point that an advisory is being actually issued by Assam for its Assamese people not to go across to Mizoram, and Mizoram is claiming that there's an economic blockade.
Well, now you see, during the 24th of this month, we had a meeting there in Shillong of the chief ministers of the 8 states, and then under the chairmanship of Union Home Minister. And then in that meeting we discussed about the border issue, and it was resolved there that the border issue should be settled amicably. And after the meeting was finished, that was on the Saturday, I went home on Sunday, and on Monday, more than 200 Assam policemen, all armed, even with ambulances, crossed the border and run over the outpost, the armed outpost of CRP and Mizoram police. And in the scuffle, there came a problem, and fighting was there, resulting in the death of 6 Assam policemen, injuring more than 50, and Mizoram also injuring 2 people. This is a very sad incident, and we are really sorry for the death and for the injured. One thing I cannot understand is that after the successful meeting of the Northeastern Chief Ministers under the auspices of the Union Home Minister, why is it that Assam government sent 200 armed police, fully armed, to run over and cross the Mizoram police armed outpost and CRP came? It is a well-known fact that once an armed group is trying to overrun the camp of other armed group, surely there is going to be a trouble, maybe amounting to the firing. And exactly
right, sir. It's been an absolutely shocking, incident, the fact that there's violence between two states. Mizoram claims that it was Assam who opened fire first. What evidence do you have on this regard? Because it was 6 Assamese cops who were killed.
You know, when an armed group tries to overrun the other armed group, there sure is going to be a problem. And there may be accusation and counter-accusation. They fire first. No, it is they who fire first. That's not a big problem, because when they try to overrun another armed group by an armed group, there sure is going to be a fighting. So anyhow, in the fighting, a good number of people died and a lot of people were injured. The strangest things, which I cannot agree, is that after a successful meeting under the Home Minister, why is it that Assam government sent an armed group of 200 people under IGP to cross the border and overrun the other armed group? knowing very well that there is going to be a firing or otherwise. They bring even an ambulance and a lot of armed groups. So,
right, sir, if you can tell us what is being done now, because it's become a very, very ugly situation. You have, Assam issuing an advisory for their people from their state to not go across to Mizoram. Yeah. You've claimed that there's an economic blockade. What efforts are being made? Are you reaching out to Assam? Is the centre trying to resolve this entire issue?
Yeah, Union Home Minister Amit Shah telephoned me. He telephoned Assam Chief Minister, and the two Chief Secretaries sat together under the chairmanship of the Union Home Secretary and resolved that everything should be settled peacefully. We hope that later on, under the guidance of the Union Home Ministry, we shall be able to resolve this peacefully. But the ugliest part is that I find no justification why, after a successful meeting of all the chief ministers and the Union Home Minister, why sending an armed group to overrun the other armed group across the border? There cannot be any justification.
All right, sir. Mr. Zoramthanga, thank you so much for speaking to us here at NDTV, and hopefully this very, very ugly situation will be resolved very soon.
Now, Mizoram claims that people from Assam have blocked its lifeline, the national highway NH 306, disrupting movement in the state. Assam says there is no economic blockade of the kind. But at ground zero, NDTV's Ratnadeep Chaudhary found that a potential crisis of supplies might be brewing. Several trucks are stranded. Even a truck carrying essential material for an oxygen plant is stuck on the national highway for the last few days. Remember, this is not a country border dispute. This is a state border dispute. This crisis continues to brew within India's own borders. Take a look at this ground report.
Essential equipment for a life-saving oxygen plant stuck here in Lailapur for 3 days, ever since the firing on the Assam-Mizoram border. Now nothing is moving on the National Highway 306, Mizoram's lifeline.
लगभग 4-5 आदमी आकर के गाड़ी को रोक लिया। मैंने कि बोला कि भैया कि देखो ये हॉस्पिटल का माल है, ये ऑक्सीजन मशीन है जो सिविल हॉस्पिटल आइजोल जाना है और कोला सिविल हॉस्पिटल में जाना है। तो उसने बोला कि नहीं, जो नहीं जाने देंगे, जो हमारे जवान को मार दिया मिजोरम पुलिस वाले, जो हम इधर से ऑक्सीजन नहीं जाने देंगे, कोई सामान नहीं जाने देंगे, कोई ट्रक नहीं जाने देंगे।
बात ऐसे भी देखिए तो अभी माहौल काफ़ी ख़राब है ना, तो इसलिए हम लोग ऐसे अकेला रिस्क नहीं ले पाएगा ना, जब तक आगे से पूरा कंफर्म ना हो हम लोगों की अभी आप जा सकते हैं, तब तक हम लोग नहीं जा पाएंगे।
This is the only highway that links Mizoram to the rest of the country. All its essential supplies actually reach Mizoram through this highway. But since Monday, after that incident took place where in firing by Mizoram police, 6 Assam police personnel died, the movement of vehicles on this highway is almost now there is no movement.
सिचुएशन में बहुत सा इम्प्रूवमेंट है और दोनों गवर्नमेंट से और होम मिनिस्ट्री से बातें चल रही हैं और सिचुएशन को जल्दी ही रिजोल्व कर दिया जाएगा।
Mizoram has written to the centre complaining about an economic blockade allegedly imposed by Assam. Assam denies any blockade, but it has sent a team of policemen to question Rajya Sabha MP K. Vanlalvena after this controversial comment.
We shot them dead because they shot us first. Whenever they charge our duty post, why don't we shot them dead? They are lucky that we don't kill them all. If they come again, we shall kill them all.
Last October, after violence at this very border, an economic blockade was imposed. That was resolved after the centre stepped in. Now, another potential crisis is looming ahead. With Ratnadeep Chaudhary at Assam-Mizoram border and Neeta Sharma in Delhi, Rohit Wellington for NDTV.
The central government has announced a 27% quota for OBCs and a 10% reservation for the economically weaker section for undergraduate and postgraduate medical and dental courses from the current academic year. The Prime Minister says it's a landmark decision.
Months ahead of key elections in several states, including the biggest one, Uttar Pradesh, the centre has announced a new set of quotas to be implemented. The Prime Minister described this as a landmark decision, saying this will immensely help thousands of our youth every year get better opportunities and create a new paradigm of social justice in our country.
The decision to go ahead with reservation was prompted by a court order, and the government was pushed to go ahead with this decision. Irrespective, all political parties cutting across party lines, including the opposition, say it will be difficult for them to oppose this political move, especially since they don't want to be seen upsetting the SCs, STs, OBCs and the economically weaker sections.
In fact, they were compelled to take decision by the orders of the court. They never yielded. They didn't want to give a reservation to backward classes, particularly in state surrendered seats. In fact, they have been dodging, I would use this word, they have been dodging, they have been denying, depriving the backward class students.
It is a historical milestone, it is a great achievement. It is a great victory for social justice. Central government should implement strictly from this academic year onwards. For the past 4 years, the OBCs have lost more than 11,200 seats in UG, PG, medical and dental seats.
The central government has provided for reservation in the All India quota scheme for medical and dental courses in state-run institutions. There will be a 27% reservation for OBCs and a 10% reservation for economically weaker sections. The government says about 5,500 students will benefit. The 27% OBC quota will take the total quotas up to 49.5%. For the EWS quota of 10%, extra seats were added after a 2019 amendment. The centre has said that the total seats for the unreserved category will not reduce. In Lucknow, the political nerve centre for the 2022 state polls and even the 2024 national election, MBBS aspirants were divided over the move.
गरीब वालों के लिए तो ठीक है, मगर जो ओबीसी वालों के लिए लगा है वो तो फिर जनरल को इफेक्ट करेगा, क्योंकि अभी कॉलेजेस की सीट कम है इंडिया में मेडिकल को लेके, और जितनी डॉक्टरों की रिक्वायरमेंट है वो बहुत ज़्यादा है एज पर द सीट।
ये जो गवर्नमेंट द्वारा ये लॉ जारी किया गया है ये हमारे लिए बेनिफिशियल होगा, क्योंकि इसके जरिए हमारे जो परसेंटेज ऑफ होंगे मेरिट के वो ज़्यादा इंक्रीज हो जाएंगे।
In 2020, the Supreme Court had dismissed a batch of petitions, including by the Tamil Nadu government, seeking 50% OBC quota in state-run medical colleges. The AIADMK-led Tamil Nadu government and the DMK, in power now, had both moved the top court after the centre had said it was not possible to extend 50% OBC reservation last year. With Sunil Prabhu, Arvind Gunashekhar and Sam Daniel, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
Now, many experts feel that COVID is here to stay and the long-term restrictions due to COVID-19 are resulting in a sharp rise in mental health issues among children. Most parents also now want their kids to go back to school.
Schools, classrooms seem like a thing of the past, and the impact of that on students is worrisome, which is why this letter by professors, activists and eminent citizens to chief ministers of 3 states, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Delhi, argue for reopening schools. The signatories of the letter say there are multiple reasons to justify the reopening of schools, and there's support for the idea of prominent citizens like Rishad Premji and Anand Mahindra. Jean Rees, who just finished a door-to-door survey at a village, says the pandemic has been devastating for children.
We have just completed a house-to-house survey of this village, and we found that every single parent in this village wants the school to reopen as soon as possible. And frankly, when you hear their stories and their children's stories, you feel like crying, because these children have been abandoned by the schooling system. There is only one child in this village who studies online, and the rest are mainly playing and roaming around the whole day.
The situation in rural areas is even worse.
ऐसा लॉकडाउन हो गया कि मेरा बाल बच्चा अनपढ़ हो गया, जो भी जान रहा था वो भी खत्म हो गया, जान पार नहीं रहा है। अब बच्चा की शिक्षा देना जरूरी है।
For the poor, school washout means a generation or more of crushing poverty, and related to that, poor health and also reduced lifespan. So the government must now consider hybrid options. Those who want or need schools to reopen must have that option, Those who prefer online can continue online.
Farida Lambe from NGO Pratham, who advises the Maharashtra government, says governments must leave these decisions to local administrations.
Safety of children is the utmost. And once we are sure and secure the safety of our children, I think reopening of the schools would be a smooth process. Having said that, we need to start schools. I don't think there's any dispute of that of the fact.
Schools say they're ready to open as they have completed vaccination of staff, etc.
No matter how hard we try, online schooling is nothing like having children on campus. It's nothing like engaging with them academically and socially in the physical space. So this clearly tells us how important it is to reopen, no matter how engaging our virtual schools have been, to ensure a wholesome upbringing of our children, ensuring little or no long-term impact. We really owe it to them to do this, and we owe it to them to reopen schools.
When will these gates reopen for children to return to school? The debate over safety will continue till the time children start getting vaccinated. But according to many experts, continuing online education and imposing restrictions is simply untenable for children any longer. In Mumbai, with camera person Sanjay Mandal, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Well, the Delhi government has asked for feedback on reopening schools for physical classes. Neighbouring Gurugram, meanwhile, has already started classes for senior students with COVID protocols in place. So what is the new normal in schools? My colleague Sonakshi Chakravarti finds out.
I think it feels absolutely fabulous, and we have to inspire that faith and that trust in our parent community and the student community.
Yes, it's a little uncomfortable from what we're used to, but I mean, it's been a year, and I mean, we have to take some precautions when we're coming back to physical.
As neighbouring Haryana reopens schools, Delhi is still debating the issue and has asked for suggestions from parents, schools and students. For nearly a month and a half now, Delhi has been reporting daily COVID cases below 100, with the fatality rate now at 1.74%. Many prominent figures like Rishad Premji and Anand Mahindra have expressed the need to reopen schools. But parents and schools are divided.
The state governments are taking their own decision, but as you would appreciate, it is tightrope walking. It's not an easy decision, because on the one hand there is a risk of exposure to the teachers, to the staff and to children.
जब तक सभी बच्चों को भी वैक्सीनेशन ना हो जाए, they should not be allowed to come to the school. There is a major risk to the life of the children.
The fact that children have not been vaccinated yet in India gives rise to the debate whether schools should reopen or not. Schools and parents say that children have been indoors for over a year now, and that social interaction is very important for their overall development. With my colleague Parimal Kumar and camera person Sushil Rathi in Delhi, Sonakshi Chakravarti for NDTV.
Welcome back. The airport regulatory bill and an inland vessel bill were passed in Parliament. This was passed through a voice vote, and there was no debate, despite the fact that there were demands for amendments. Even as disruptions continued for an 8th straight day in Parliament now, the opposition demanding a probe into the Pegasus spyware scandal, the government continues to pass key bills.
Within a span of 30 minutes, the government pushed through 2 bills, despite the opposition's protests and demands for amendments. It took 5 minutes each to pass the airport regulatory bill redefining major airports and a new inland vessel bill.
दिनांक 28 जुलाई को जो सदन में घटना हुई है, उसे मुझे अत्यंतिक पीड़ा हुई है। आसन पर पर्ची फेंकना, आसन की अवमानना करना हमारी संसदीय परंपराओं के अनुरूप नहीं है।
In the Rajya Sabha too, 2 bills were passed with members continuing to protest and seek a division of votes. The strategy of the government is clear: to pass bills even as the opposition protests. This week, key legislations including increasing expenditure have been approved without any discussion on the floor of the House.
दोषारोपण कर रहा है, मुद्दे को अवॉइड कर रहा है।
हमारे ऊपर दोषारोपण करते हैं हर दिन कि हम अवरुद्ध कर रहे हैं संसद को। मैं बहुत सरलता से और विनम्रता से आपसे कुछ मूल मुद्दे पूछना चाहता हूं। क्या आपने पेगासस सॉफ्टवेयर नाम की चीज खरीदी थी या उपयोग किया था?
Every minute of India's parliament running costs India's taxpayer nearly 2.5 lakhs of rupees. And with both the government and the opposition refusing to cede ground, a compromise and a resolution seems unlikely, and India's parliament a casualty. With camera person Sudesh, Sunil Prabhu, NDTV.
Well, these are pictures that are now coming in from the Loha Bridge in the national capital. The water level of the Yamuna River has risen following rains, incessant rains in the national capital in the last few days. Those are pictures from the Loha Bridge area where water is flowing above the danger mark. Welcome back. Let's get you the big COVID update. Well, Kerala is the state that's been reporting almost 50% of India's daily rise in cases. Over 22,000 cases of COVID have been reported for a second straight day. The centre has decided to send a 6-member team headed by the NCDC chief to take stock of the state's efforts. Uma Sudhir reports.
The answer to why Kerala is reporting more than 50% of the country's COVID cases is in the latest ICMR Sero survey that says only 44% of Kerala's population has antibodies to fight COVID infection, whereas it is 65% for the rest of the country.
The seroprevalence study conducted by the ICMR shows that the number of people or the percentage of people who have antibodies in their body is almost around 42%, which shows that our preventive mechanism was very good. Our system is always to test, trace and treat.
Even the 44% seropositivity in Kerala is not just due to infection but also vaccination. Kerala has already vaccinated over half of its adult population with at least one dose. The centre is concerned about Kerala as in the last 8 weeks, average daily new cases have jumped by 13%. Daily deaths have been between 97 and 174. Weekly positivity rate has been between 10.5% and 14.8%, but never below 10%.
The hospital admissions are also gradually increasing, and we have around 3,200 hospital admissions in last 24 hours. The major concern is that if the hospitals are getting filled, if the hospital gets, is saturated, we cannot afford to have more beds, then it's going to be a huge problem for the health infrastructure in Kerala.
The much lauded Kerala model has perhaps in a sense become its undoing as virus exposure has been low. The challenge for Kerala is now to fast track vaccinations even more so that they can slow the rate of infection and bring down hospital admissions, severity and mortality. With SP Babu in Thiruvananthapuram and camera person Nagraju, Uma Sudhir, NDTV.
From Kerala, let's now shift our focus to Uttar Pradesh. For the last 4 days, 4,500 plus Uttar Pradesh government ambulances critical for services, especially in the state's vast rural areas, have gone off the road. With 20,000 plus workers on contract with a private company to run the vehicles, they are on strike, demanding better working conditions.
Patients being brought to government hospitals in UP in carts, autos and even on cots. With more than 4,500 ambulances off the road. After this strike by the state's ambulance drivers and technicians demanding better working conditions. The protesters operate the UP government-owned ambulances on contract for the private company GVK EMRI. The protesters say they are paid a little over 12,000 rupees per month each, but made to work 12 hours daily instead of the 8 hours as per contract. They also claim many of the ambulance staff have been arbitrarily sacked recently.
ठेका प्रथा से मुक्ति दिलाई जाए और यह सरकार कर सकती है। बहुत ज़्यादा एम्प्लॉइज नहीं है, हम मात्र 20,000 एम्प्लॉइज हैं और इन्हीं 20,000 एम्प्लॉइज ने कोरोना के फेज 1 और फेज 2 में फर्स्ट वॉरियर बनकर कार्य किया है।
The protesting employees say they are operating 10 ambulances in each of the UP's 75 districts for emergency cases. So far, both the UP government and the private company contracted to run these ambulances have acted tough. For instance, in Lucknow, what they've done is that they've taken away keys of these vehicles from the protesting employees. They've got these vehicles to one place and they're saying that they're going to actually recruit new people to run these ambulances.
जब भी रिक्रूटमेंट करते हैं तो जो एग्रीमेंट होता है, सैलरी का एग्रीमेंट होता है, जो भी होता है वो बड़ा ट्रांसपेरेंट होता है। सबके पास सबको ये पता होता है कि हमारी सैलरी कितनी है, कितनी आएगी, और उन्हीं शर्तों पे वो लोग ज्वाइन करते हैं। हम लोग रिक्रूट करते हैं, तो ये कह देना कि हम लोग शोषण करते हैं, एक्सप्लॉयटेशन करते हैं, ये तो बिल्कुल गलत है।
जीवीके को संदेश देके, जीवीके को नोटिस देके उनके माध्यम से एफआईआर भी किया गया उन्हीं के यूनियन के लीडर पर, और उनके माध्यम से कई लोग को बर्खास्त भी किया गया।
For now, the stalemate continues. With camera person Vineet Verma, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
Well, the death of a judge in Jharkhand on Wednesday in what was initially believed to be a hit and run has taken a chilling turn, with security footage of the incident leading to a murder investigation. An SIT has been formed and the Jharkhand High Court is monitoring the probe. Both the accused have been arrested. The tempo used in the incident was a stolen one. Interestingly, the man who claimed his tempo was stolen himself has a criminal record.
After this chilling video, Dhanbad Judge Uttam Anand's death is now being investigated as murder, not a hit and run. On an empty road, this vehicle goes out of its path to knock him down.
तो देख करके लग रहा है कि इंटेंशनली कोई मारा है, ये एक्सीडेंट का केस नहीं लगता है।
The police say it has seized the vehicle and arrested 2 people on charges of murder who have reportedly confessed. The number plate of the vehicle had been tampered with, hinting at signs of conspiracy.
जो घटना की जांच के दायरे में आ रहे हैं, उनको हम लोग उनसे पूछताछ करते हैं। हमारी टीम अलग-अलग जगह भी है। अब देख रहे हैं जो हमारे सही पदाधिकारी हमारे साथ हैं।
The actual owner of the vehicle claimed that it was stolen 2 days ago, while the family of the accused driver claimed he told them that he had won a lottery.
रात में करीब 3:30 बजे हम उठे तो देखे टेम्पो गायब है।
मेरा भाई बोला कि कहाँ से आया, तो बोला हम आए पाथलडी से, तो हमको 80,000 लॉटरी लगा है। लॉटरी लगने के बाद हम यही गाड़ी लिए हैं और एक मोबाइल लिए।
Additional District Judge Uttam Yadav was involved in several high-profile cases. He had recently rejected the bails for 2 accused of Aman Singh's gang, a criminal notorious for kidnappings and extortion across Jharkhand and Bihar. The murder case of Ranjay Singh, a close aide of Jharia MLA Sanjeev Singh, was also pending before his court. The issue was also raised today before the Chief Justice of India by the Supreme Court Bar Association President Vikas Singh, who sought a CBI probe into the matter.
This was so shocking and such a brazen attempt on the independence of judiciary. I am demanding a CBI inquiry.
The Chief Justice of India said, "I have spoken to Chief Justice of Jharkhand High Court and he has taken up the issue and the case is going on there. We are aware of the case and we will take care." The Jharkhand High Court meanwhile warned the district police, with Chief Justice Ravi Ranjan saying there was a delay in filing an FIR in the case. We will monitor the probe and will not tolerate any laxity in it. If we find laxity on the part of the district police, then we will not hesitate in handing over the probe to the CBI. The judge was out jogging at around 5:35 in the morning. A passerby took him to hospital where he died around 9:30. The police identified him after his family reported him missing at 7 a.m. He was only half a kilometer away from his home when he was hit by the vehicle.
The broad daylight incident has sent shockwaves across the country because if the guardians of the law itself are not safe, then it raises serious questions and demands a thorough probe. With Kundan from Dhanbad, Harivansh from Ranchi and Manish Kumar from Patna, in New Delhi, this is Sukirti Dwivedi for NDTV.
And for more on the probe, let's go across to NDTV's Manish Kumar, who's been tracking the details of this story very closely. Manish, what more? What's the latest? What more can you tell us?
See, both the accused were produced before the local CGM court and the
is prayed for their 5 days remand, which has been granted by the local court. But according to the preliminary investigation, this original owner of this auto is also a robber. He also had several criminal cases pending against him, and now he is also missing. Although he lost a case of missing auto in the local police station, and as far as these two accused are concerned, they also had some cases of local brawl and consumption of drugs. On that ground, they were sent to jail. And police is saying that they are claiming that at that time, at that particular moment, when they hit the judge, at that time they were drunk and in that condition. But police is saying that they are trying to verify that where they have consumed alcohol or whether they are just lying to save somebody, and it will take some time. So now 5 teams have been constituted because a SIT headed by an IG rank officer has been entrusted with the task of investigation. So it will take some more time to find out what is the truth and who is the person behind the killing. Jessica?
All right. Thanks, Manish, for joining us with the very latest. We'll continue to keep a close watch on those developments. We have breaking news and good news coming from the Tokyo Olympics. Lavlina Borgohain has guaranteed herself a medal at the Tokyo Olympic Games. Let's go right across to Rika Roy joining us with the very latest. Rika, what more can you tell us?
Well, Rishika, it is a big moment for India after the first day, first show by Mirabai Chanu. It is another woman from the northeast, from Assam, Lavlina Borgohain, who has now guaranteed herself a medal at the Tokyo Olympic Games by winning her quarter-final bout against a World Championship winner. In fact, she won by a split decision, but in the first round and in the first round, the judges were split. In the final round, also the judges were split. But in the second round, the judges gave her all 10 points. They were all on the same page that she was the clear winner of in the second round. And it is a big moment because we've been waiting for a medal from our athletes, 127 athletes at the games. And this is the second medal that India has been guaranteed by boxer Lavlina Borgohain. Now, even if she goes on to lose in the semi-final match, she will win a bronze medal. Right now, I have with me Poonam Beniwal, the high-performance boxing coach of Sports Authority of India, who has seen these boxers very closely. Poonam, big moment for India. Tell us what really stood out for you in that bout between Lavlina and the World Championship gold medalist.
Yeah, it's a big moment for India. And Lavlina boxed very well today. She boxed very smartly. Lavlina was having the height advantage. She boxed in all the ranges, in all the 3 rounds. She threw the explosive punches. She was literally confident in the 3rd round. And as far as Thai boxer is concerned, she tried to box in both the paths. She also tried for the orthodox and southpaw. But Lavlina had height advantage and she just boxed in all the ranges. I think that Thai boxer took Lavlina lightly, because the Thai boxer was quite experienced, but she didn't box well today. Lavlina, she boxed tremendously, very good. And the first round was, although I was thinking it's a clear round, it's a 5-0 round, but she got a split decision. Even then, in the second round, she boxed clearly like a winner. And in the 3rd round, she in the last minute, she just did very well. And the Thai boxer was fighting. She was not boxing. She was holding, clinching. But Lavlina fought very well. I'm very happy for India, and I'm very happy for Lavlina as well.
Poonam, in the first round there was a split decision. In the 3rd round there was a split decision. But on the second round, we saw that all the judges were on the same page. They gave Lavlina 10 points. Why were the judges split in the first and in the 3rd round? Weren't they convinced that she was clearly the dominant of the two?
No, actually what happens in boxing, 5 judges are sitting around the 4 corners of ring. So they see the boxing from different angles. So sometimes if they are boxing in red corner, the judges just sitting in the blue corner could not see what is happening in red corner. So it's like they are watching boxing from all the angles. So that's why they are sitting 5 judges. So the decisions are according to that only. And it was like, both are boxing. There are exchange of punches, but Lavlina proved well.
I've been reading about her that she was initially a kickboxer who shifted to boxing, and perhaps because of that, she also has developed a certain kind of skills. Could you take us through, her special skills, because she came from the background of kickboxing?
Actually, she has performed progressively. She performed well in juniors, then in youth, and then elite. I have been with her in youth and elite camps. So psychologically, initially she was like not so very well, but she worked on her psychology. We used to discuss with her. I suggested her to watch the bouts of Clarissa Shields. She was so obedient and hard worker. She watched the bouts of Clarissa Shields and she adopted that, and which we can see in the ring. So she have been like in a progression. She has performed this Olympics. It's not like one overnight work. So she was working in 2012, then 14, 16, 17 World Championships, and now, she has won bronze at 2 World Championships, then 2 Asian Championships bronze, and her hard work pays today.
Welcome back. Heavy overnight rain in Kolkata and several parts of the city are now waterlogged. There's been no rain in Kolkata as of this morning, but there is a rain red alert that's been sounded for 3 districts of Purulia, West Bardhaman and West Midnapur. Let's go right across to Monideepa joining us. All right, we will be joined by Monideepa in just a bit, but those are pictures that are coming in from Kolkata. Heavy rain overnight has led to waterlogging in several parts of the city. Those are pictures that we're getting to you from this morning. No rain has been reported as of this morning in Kolkata, but waterlogging from the incessant rains last night is being witnessed. This, of course, is going to lead to several traffic snarls across the city of Kolkata even today. There's a rain red alert, meanwhile, that's been sounded for 3 districts in West Bengal. This is Purulia, Bardhaman and Medinipur. So that's the latest information that we have coming in from West Bengal. Several parts of Kolkata, they're waterlogged following incessant rains overnight, and like I said, a rain red alert been sounded for 3 districts. And the water level in the Yamuna is also rising following incessant rains in the national capital in the last few days. These are visuals that we're going to be putting out on our screens from the Loha Bridge area in Delhi. Water levels in the Yamuna constantly rising after incessant rains in the national capital in the last few days. Delhi has also seen sporadic spells of heavy rain in a short duration of time, leading once again to waterlogging in several parts. In fact, let's go right across to my colleague Monideepa joining us from Kolkata. Monideepa, incessant rains and one can actually see the waterlogging there behind you.
Well, actually, this is Sukhiya Street in central Kolkata, and this is infamous for waterlogging. I have actually in the past taken a boat down this road when there has been severe waterlogging. Truth be told, water is coming down in most parts of the city that were flooded with this heavy overnight rain. But, this is one of the streets that's always badly hit, and there are others. Many parts of North Kolkata, particularly, are in bad shape. So are we hearing about places like Lake Town. You can see they have opened the manhole cover over there and water is gushing in. This is, of course, the corporation workers, and this will give you an idea of how bad it has been. Through the night there has been heavy rain in Kolkata. Apparently the highest rainy day yesterday. That is what happened till about 5 o'clock in the evening, and the rains worsened overnight and things have been really bad. One person died of electrocution, another two, they were lawyers at the Alipur court. They were saved from electrocution because the judge, who heard them screaming, rushed out of his courtroom and threw a wooden chair at them, dislodging them from the electric pole that they had accidentally touched and nearly got electrocuted. So these are situations that have happened over the city. Now the Met Department, we believe, has said there is a depression over the Bay of Bengal, over Bengal and Bangladesh. That depression is moving towards Jharkhand and Bihar, and heavy rains could be expected there. Several districts of Bengal, Purulia, West Midnapur, West Bardhaman, these are three districts that could see very heavy rains today. Thankfully, over Kolkata, the skies have cleared.
Welcome back. Kerala has been reporting over 22,000 daily cases of COVID for 2 straight days now. The centre has sent a 6-member team headed by the NCDC chief to the state to aid in its efforts to combat the surge in COVID-19 infections. Kerala accounts for almost 50% of India's daily case rise.
The answer to why Kerala is reporting more than 50% of the country's COVID cases is in the latest ICMR Sero survey that says only 44% of Kerala's population has antibodies to fight COVID infection, whereas it is 65% for the rest of the country.
The seroprevalence study conducted by the ICMR shows that the number of people, or the percentage of people who have antibodies in their body, is almost around 42%, which shows that our preventive mechanism was very good. Our system is always to test, trace and treat.
Even the 44% seropositivity in Kerala is not just due to infection but also vaccination. Kerala has already vaccinated over half of its adult population with at least one dose. The centre is concerned about Kerala as in the last 8 weeks, average daily new cases have jumped by 13%. Daily deaths have been between 97 and 174. Weekly positivity rate has been between 10.5% and 14.8%, but never below 10%.
The hospital admissions are also gradually increasing, and we have around 3,200 hospital admissions in last 24 hours. The major concern is that if the hospitals are getting filled, if the hospital gets, is saturated, we cannot afford to have more beds, then it's going to be a huge problem for the health infrastructure in Kerala.
The much lauded Kerala model has perhaps in a sense become its undoing, as virus exposure has been low. The challenge for Kerala is now to fast-track vaccinations even more so that they can slow the rate of infection and bring down hospital admissions, severity and mortality. With SP Babu in Thiruvananthapuram and camera person Nagraju, Uma Sudhir, NDTV.
Well, on to our special campaign, Vaccinate India, in partnership with Google, where we look to answer questions you may be Googling about the coronavirus vaccine. And to answer those questions, Dr. Romil Tikku, Director Internal Medicine, Max Healthcare, joins us. Thanks so much, Dr. Tikku, for being with us. I want to begin by asking you about vaccine-induced immunity. How long does it typically take to develop immunity after the COVID-19 vaccine?
See, after the second dose, it takes about 2 weeks for you to develop immunity. On average, you might say 2 to 3 weeks. But how long does it last? We still don't know. There's increasing evidence now that the antibodies start to wane after 6 weeks. So probably that's why there's a talk of going around for a booster dose now. Even abroad, they're recommending that probably after 6 months of the second dose, you'll have a booster. But if you ask me about immunity, 2 weeks post the second dose.
Right. And is there a difference between vaccine-induced immunity and infection-induced immunity?
Yeah, there is a little difference because natural infection gives you more immunity, and there's some data now which says that it might give you protection for life or for at least 10 months. And the immunity which the vaccine gives you might wane over a period of time, say 6 months to 9 months. We don't know. We still don't have enough data on that. But if you've been infected and then you get vaccinated, it gives you the best protection. But once you're infected, at least 3 to 6 months, you can easily wait. Our recommendations here is 3 months post the infection.
And what's the difference between the level of immunity that you have after one dose vis-a-vis the second dose?
Well, the first dose just initiates the process of immunity, and you need the second dose as a booster, and that gives you a complete protection. The first dose doesn't give you enough protection, though data from UK does say that Covishield gives you about 60 to 70% protection 3 weeks post the first shot, but that doesn't last you enough. So you definitely need a second shot. And in case of Covaxin, it's 3 to 4 weeks later, and Covishield now we've increased the gap to about 12 weeks.
What
and
about
regarding Covishield? Yeah.
Yes. No,
Sorry.
please finish what you were saying.
Regarding Covishield, they say that the best immunity antibody response is post at least 12 weeks. That's why there's a gap.
Right. What about immunity against variants of COVID? How much more do we know at this juncture about the degree of protection you get, or after being vaccinated, how protected are you against new emerging variants of COVID?
Well, even the vaccines which are being used in India do protect you against the variants. Even against the Delta variant, it's about 60% the efficacy. And these vaccines actually prevent you from getting severe disease and death. And that's what they're meant for. You might still get infected. You might have a breakthrough infection. Even after vaccination, you might get infected. But if you are vaccinated, probably you will not end up in the hospital, and the mortality will be very low. But having said that, most of the vaccines all over the world, which have been authorized for emergency use, do protect you from all the variants. They give you some sort of a broad immune response which protects you from severe disease and death.
Right. The other important question that a lot of people want to know about is, how do mRNA vaccines actually work? How are they different from the vaccines that we have in India right now?
Well, the vaccines that we have in India have a different technique. Covishield uses a vector vaccine and adenovirus for carrying the genetic material. And the Covaxin has an inactivated virus where the genetic material does not get replicated inside the body. It just elicits an immune response. And in mRNA vaccines, it's the mRNA which is coded and sent, which initiates an immune response, and then antibodies are formed. The techniques are different, but majorly they're all meant for preventing severe disease and death. And the efficacy of all these vaccines is very, very good, about 70% and above. The mRNA vaccines have 90% and above efficacy.
Is one better than the other?
Well, I wouldn't say that. On paper, yes, maybe the efficacy is more, but they all do their job. They are meant to prevent severe disease and death. They might not prevent infection, and that's not what they're intended for. They're intended for preventing disease and death.
All right. I think that's very important advice, because there are a lot of people who've decided that they are going to wait for a more efficacious vaccine or an mRNA vaccine to come to India. But I think doctors across the board have said that you need to just go and get yourself vaccinated with the first available vaccine that you can find. Thanks so much, Dr. Tikku, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Moving on, there are many experts who feel that coronavirus is here to stay, and therefore long-term restrictions are also here to stay. Now, these long-term COVID-19 rules and restrictions have led to a sharp rise in mental health issues, especially among children, because the pandemic-related restrictions have ensured that children stay confined to their homes. They're not allowed to go back to school. But many parents now actually want their children to go back to school.
Schools, classrooms seem like a thing of the past, and the impact of that on students is worrisome, which is why this letter by professors, activists and eminent citizens to chief ministers of 3 states, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Delhi, argue for reopening schools. The signatories of the letter say there are multiple reasons to justify the reopening of schools, and there's support for the idea of prominent citizens like Rishad Premji and Anand Mahindra. Jean Rees, who just finished a door-to-door survey at a village, says the pandemic has been devastating for children.
We have just completed a house-to-house survey of this village, and we found that every single parent in this village wants the school to reopen as soon as possible. And frankly, when you hear their stories and their children's stories, you feel like crying, because these children have been abandoned by the schooling system. There is only one child in this village who studies online, and the rest are mainly playing and roaming around the whole day.
The situation in rural areas is even worse.
ऐसा लॉकडाउन हो गया कि मेरा बाल बच्चा अनपढ़ हो गया, जो भी जान रहा था वो भी खत्म हो गया, जान पार नहीं रहा है, अब बच्चा की शिक्षा देना जरूरी है.
For the poor, school washout means a generation or more of crushing poverty, and related to that, poor health and also reduced lifespan. So the government must now consider hybrid options. Those who want or need schools to reopen must have that option. Those who prefer online can continue online.
Farida Lambe from NGO Pratham, who advises the Maharashtra government, says governments must leave these decisions to local administrations.
Safety of children is the utmost. And once we are sure and secure the safety of our children, I think reopening of the schools would be a smooth process. Having said that, we need to start schools. I don't think there's any dispute of that of the fact.
Schools say they're ready to open as they have completed vaccination of staff, etc.
No matter how hard we try, online schooling is nothing like having children on campus. It's nothing like engaging with them academically and socially in the physical space. So this clearly tells us how important it is to reopen, no matter how engaging our virtual schools have been, to ensure a wholesome upbringing of our children, ensuring little or no long-term impact. We really owe it to them to do this, and we owe it to them to reopen schools.
When will these gates reopen for children to return to school? The debate over safety will continue till the time children start getting vaccinated. But according to many experts, continuing online education and imposing restrictions is simply untenable for children any longer. In Mumbai, with camera person Sanjay Mandal, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Now, the Delhi government has actually asked for feedback on reopening schools for physical classes. Neighbouring Gurugram, meanwhile, has already started classes for senior students with COVID-19 protocols in place. What does the new normal in schools look like? Sonakshi found out.
I think it feels absolutely fabulous, and we have to inspire that faith and that trust in our parent community and the student community.
Yes, it's a little uncomfortable from what we're used to, but I mean, it's been a year, and I mean, we have to take some precautions when we're coming back to physical.
As neighbouring Haryana reopens schools, Delhi is still debating the issue and has asked for suggestions from parents, schools and students. For nearly a month and a half now, Delhi has been reporting daily COVID cases below 100, with a fatality rate now at 1.74%. Many prominent figures like Rishad Premji and Anand Mahindra have expressed the need to reopen schools. But parents and schools are divided.
The state governments are taking their own decision, but as you would appreciate, it is tightrope walking. It's not an easy decision, because on the one hand there is a risk of exposure to the teachers, to the staff and to children.
जब तक सभी बच्चों को भी वैक्सीनेशन ना हो जाए, they should not be allowed to come to the school. There is a major risk to the life of the children.
The fact that children have not been vaccinated yet in India gives rise to the debate whether schools should reopen or not. Schools and parents say that children have been indoors for over a year now, and that social interaction is very important for their overall development. With my colleague Parimal Kumar and camera person Sushil Rathi in Delhi, Sonakshi Chakravarti for NDTV.